Well, hello. Welcome back. This is part two of reading my mini manifesto titled Brian Needleman Supports Equality and Respect for LGBT Folks Everywhere. This is part two, page one, and paragraph one. Welcome back. I just wanted to say, if you felt that the introduction kind of enticed you to keep checking me out, welcome back. And it's very humbling that you're listening to this second version here. So here it goes. My thoughts and opinions expressed in this mini manifesto and video are my own. I expect folks will agree and disagree with me on a spectrum from nothing to everything. My intention is to simply speak my truth. Feel free to disagree with me, as I will with you, on many matters that get discussed in live conversations, or posted on Facebook, YouTube, and whatever other social media outlets are out there. Throughout my proclamation, the acronym LGBT, which again stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender, will be used interchangeably with gay or gays and those who identify as transgender. So for the purpose of my assertion here, I will be using the term gay inclusively to reference men and women who are sexually attracted to individuals of the same sex, as well as those who are bisexual, which is a person who reckons any given subjective percentage to being sexually attracted to both men and women. And I'm using the term transgender to reference individuals whose sense of personal identity and gender does not correspond with their birth sex. This writer is also exercising his prerogative to deem when the use of the term LGBT is sufficient and when gay/gays and those who identify as transgender need to be spelled out for me to be able to best digest and convey my truth. In actuality, I don't fancy myself as being exclusively part of or loyal to any political party or perversion, as I like to refer to it. You're going to hear me say religious and political perversions, and that's just something that Brian says. Like it or don't like it, that's just what I say. Now, I am registered as a Democrat for all intents of purposes, whatever that means. But I see myself not just as an advocate and champion for causes by what mainstream media and many garden variety folks out there label as quote-unquote liberal, quote-unquote left of center, or quote-unquote progressive. But I consider myself as an advocate and champion for human rights and human causes. Whatever political genre, can never say that word right, genre, and or perversion anyone wants to associate me with, go ahead and knock yourself out. Again, I am a licensed marriage family therapist in the state of California, but my identity is not defined by my clinical license and what I do for a living. In fact, after more than 25 years of direct clinical service to others, I have found that my identity has absolutely nothing to do with me being a licensed psychotherapist. and everything to do with how my character and integrity play out by how I choose to live my life as a human being, and how that impacts my life and the lives of others. For many years, I chose not to use Facebook, YouTube, or other social media venues out there to express my thoughts on political or other matters. Well, not anymore. The days of me maintaining a low profile by keeping my big mouth shut for fear of rustling folks' feathers and not being liked are long gone. My big mouth has often gotten me into trouble. Just a few times. I've irked people, and I've hurt a lot of folks. Some things I profoundly regret and wish that I could go back in time and tell myself to either keep my big mouth shut or express something in an appropriate manner. Excuse me, the acid reflux is doing its number. Let's knock that back down. Sometimes I profoundly regret and wish that I, again, could go back in time and say things differently or not say anything at all. And other times, if given the chance, I wouldn't take back an iota of a syllable that spewed out of my big mouth. But my big mouth has also served me as a powerful conduit for speaking out against what is dishonorable and choosing not to remain quiet and allow others to tread on me as if I were a doormat. My big mouth has empowered me to voice my truth and empowered others to voice their truths. Set my boundaries with others and against what is unjust. Advocate for myself and others for what is just and right. Never allow my beliefs and self-esteem to be dependent on others' approval, and to practice and preach that living my life with honesty and integrity is worth more than all the gold stored in Fort Knox. That is, if the gold is still housed there, I don't know. I didn't look that up. Maybe they moved it, maybe it's still there, I don't know. Moving on. Regardless of any given context or intention, the price tag for my big mouth connects pieces of the jigsaw puzzle in my inner private reservoir that reveals a part of the picture as to why my path and journey, more times than not, has been traveled alone. I do my best not to engage in battles or conversations with people that have polarized views from my own on religious and or political perversions, especially with folks who are deeply entrenched in unaccommodating religious fundamentalism or ultra-conservative perversions. I haven't yet mastered the art of letting go of my ego, and on a few rare occasions, couldn't keep my big mouth shut. Got right up in someone's grill and perpetuated a real shitstorm. But I have learned over the years and continue to learn and accept that people have a right to their opinions, as I do. There is a beautiful classic expression that sums it up best. Opinions are like assholes, in that we all have one. I try not to battle folks with polarized opinions from my own in order to make myself right at the expense of making others wrong. I sincerely do my best to not intentionally try to make such folks look ignorant and foolish from what I deem as a shallow, distorted, or erroneous perspective of someone. I haven't yet mastered that one either, and it's still a work in progress. Mostly I strive towards disengaging and implementing parameters by saying something like, we can agree that we disagree, and we can talk about something else other than our religious and or political perversions. My friend Lisa McCabe, whom many of you know and adore from my old Bensalem, Pennsylvania homestead, granted me permission to say in my revised mini manifesto and on my video that she is all for LGBT marriage, rights, and equality. Lisa has been very supportive of me since my 2013 post advocating for same-sex marriage and human rights. Lisa has continually encouraged me to express my thoughts openly in the aforementioned public venues. But moreover, Lisa has offered me sage advice about being mindful of expressing my convictions without crossing the line and stooping to a level of degrading others for their beliefs because they differ from my own. Lisa had quite eloquently articulated that there is a fine line when it comes to passionately expressing my beliefs and feelings on any given matter without degrading others for theirs. So thank you, Lisa, for your unwavering support, your wise and invaluable feedback to me. Lisa, I really appreciate your intelligent advice. I will do the best I can to heed your guidance and be as mindful as possible about being respectful of that often very, very delicate line there. Many of time, this is easier said than done, but it's always a right-minded goal to consciously strive towards. So thank you again, Lisa. And also, Lisa McCabe has a birthday tomorrow on July 17th. And I think everybody knows her age. She was in my graduating class. So Lisa turns 50 tomorrow. So I just want to go slightly off script here and wish you a very happy birthday. You're turning 50. It's a big one. I just got there myself on April 18th. I get it that sometimes we got things going on in our lives that we either do or don't feel like celebrating, but this is your day. All of who you are, your trials, your tribulations in life have culminated to you turning 50 years old. And that's a milestone to celebrate in whatever capacity that you do. So, happy birthday to you, Lisa. Hope you have a good one. And enjoy. And I'm going to give you the best birthday present in the world, and that is I will not sing you happy birthday, as I have been banned from every karaoke bar up and down the east and west coast there. All right, happy birthday. In my not so humble opinion, this country suffers from detrimental, genuine, and blatant ignorance, racism, and bigotry towards gay folks and those folks who identify as transgender. Such dehumanizing attributes perpetuates a frightening and regressive culture that too often rears its ugly head in discrimination and beyond disturbing and dangerous encounters with people who express their uncompromising ignorance and hatred by committing egregious and cruel hate crimes. One of the most visible and influential civil rights activists, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., stated, "Nothing in the world is more dangerous than sincere ignorance and conscientious stupidity." The aforementioned well-timed Dr. Martin Luther King quote was provided to me by my friend Gabriella Pacheco Jack, whom many of you know and also adore from my old Bensalem homestead. Gabriella also granted me permission to publicly state that she has supported LGBT rights for marriage equality long before the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage in all 50 states on July 27, 2015. And in general, rights of all gays and those who identify as transgender. Gabriella, like Lisa McCade and many others out there, have also had my back and been very supportive of me advocating for the respect and equality of LGBT folks and human rights issues in the aforementioned public venues. And for that, Gabriella, Lisa, and everyone else, thank you very much. Your unremitting support and encouragement is very humbling and means more to me than you'll ever know. Now, there's a lot of folks out there I want to thank, and people are saying, how come you didn't thank me? But what'll happen is I'll mention someone, I'll forget someone, so I'm just giving a general blanket thank you to everybody. I don't want this to turn into something like a Stevie Wonder acceptance speech where he starts to say, and I want to thank God, and I want to thank my first grade teacher, and all my brothers and sisters, and my parents, my aunts, my uncles, my best friend from grammar school, my best friend from high school, the first girl I laid, the first girl who let me touch her boobies. You know, I could go on for hours talking about who I'm grateful for, but I thank you all, even if I don't mention your names here. There are many reasons why there are random surges and steady increases in deplorable behaviors towards LGBT folks. Some of those causes may be connected with the increased media coverage on hate crimes and laws that are proponents against discrimination, as well as laws enabling discrimination, encouraging and discouraging tolerance, bringing into awareness celebrating LGBT pride, and the United States Supreme Court ruling in 2015 that legally granted gays and those who identify as transgender the right to marry in all 50 states. When I wrote this, made this up a little while ago, whenever progression and bravery shine, retrogression and fear darken. And here's a follow-up quote from an influential psychiatrist and psychoanalyst, Carl Jung, MD, who stated that the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. This means a number of different things, but essentially whenever there's a lot of highlight onto awareness and growth and all that stuff, it also brings out the dark side, the people that don't support LGBT people. It brings up a lot of people that are angry, a lot of people that hate LGBT folks. So whenever you have growth, you also have the other side that comes up, and that's what those quotes were about there. So despite the constant hostile oppositions, time for some water. LGBT pride is still celebrated, not only in the month of June, but honored and lived in this country and throughout the world by many during the other 11 months of the year as well. My former gay patient, Mensch, ironically died by suicide in the month of June. The unfortunate timing of Mensch's death makes me extra sad when so many folks were celebrating Pride and he is no longer alive to enjoy this time as he had for many years, and bask in the commemoration that so many gay and those who identify as transgender in this country honor, breathe, and live with every fiber in their being. However, LGBT Pride does offer me an especially rich and timely opportunity, as it was just last month in June, to honor my promise to Mensch by advocating for LGBT rights of equality, respect, and to be able to live their lives openly and safely with honesty and integrity. You're going to hear me frequently repeat a lot of things, but this particular line is gay and those who identify as transgender and living their lives openly and safely with honesty and integrity. This is really the core line, the core burn here in my inner basement that fuels my impetus here. And this has moved me to reveal my thoughts and compelled me to speak my mind and my truth and offer my unswerving and wholehearted support of LGBT folks everywhere, in all 50 states and throughout the world. I support gays and those who identify as transgender being afforded the legal right to marry and be granted the same entitlements that heterosexual married couples are permitted. And not just because LGBT folks can now legally marry in all 50 states as of year 2015, but because I believe with every fiber in my being that marriage should be between two consenting adults that love each other and desire to be with one another for the rest of their lives. Such factors as a human being's sexual orientation and or gender identification, in my not so humble opinion, should never be issues that impede two human beings' desire to commit to loving and marrying one another, just as heterosexual couples do, without punishment or banishment on any given day. I lost only one patient to suicide in over 25 years of direct clinical service to folks, but the horrid experience has forever humbled me. It's forced me to look at myself closely and examine my many human flaws. Mensch's suicide has changed me in ways that would fill several volumes of a War and Peace-sized novel to explain. The reasons behind Mensch's choice to die by suicide will forever remain confidential, even though he is deceased. There are legal and ethical requirements that I'm obligated to oblige as a licensed marriage family therapist in the state of California, even when a patient is deceased. Regardless, I would never break a patient's confidentiality, even if the law permitted me to do so when a patient dies. What people reveal to me from their private and personal inner reservoirs in session is sacred, and it needs to be honored in their death just as much as when they were alive. I know that intellectually I did everything clinically appropriate to prevent Mensch's suicide, but in the end could not compete with his choice to die. Mensch's decision to die by suicide taught me a very painful and humbling lesson about how my good intentions and tenacious efforts often have very little influence over the actions of others. Mensch and other LGBT patients have modeled raw courage for me by how they have accepted and sometimes deeply valued their sexual orientation and or gender identification and true selves. I have been extremely fortunate to be a part of many LGBT patients' process as they came out to their families, friends, and the world. Their journey to live their lives openly and safely with honesty and integrity, regardless of the consequences, has often been difficult to say the least. Many have felt demeaned from being the victims of obvious as well as strongly implied discrimination. Numerous have suffered shame, rejection, estrangement, and permanent ostracism by those in their families, communities, social connections, and even those who were once believed to be in their inner circle or closest to them. Several LGBT patients that I've worked with have been the victims of hate crimes that have manifested in verbal cruelty, abuse, property damage, graffiti defamation, violent physical assaults, and other atrocities. Why do people choose to live their lives practicing bigotry, spewing hatred, and perpetuating beyond immoral and horrendous violations against gays and those who identify as transgender? In my not so humble opinion, only an unenlightened and gutless sectarian can truly answer that question. What I do believe with every fiber in my being is that gays and those who identify as transgender model a raw courage by how they have bravely chosen not to remain in the safety of the closet there, be true to themselves, and be out in America and a world filled with seasoned antagonism, disgust, and hatred towards them. One of the many reasons I profoundly respect LGBT folks is because of how much resolve and strength it must take for them to be completely vulnerable. The strength that it takes them to be completely undisguised while surrounded by many benighted and possibly homophobic folks who remain resolved in their beliefs and desires to discriminate and cause physical and emotional harm to these courageous, kind-hearted, and decent folks. So, if someone gets the bright idea, I mean that sarcastically, to call me some kind of a derogatory slang name for gay, like fag or sausage jockey, because I advocate for these wonderful and gutsy folks, I tell them, thank you for the compliment. Perhaps it might be beyond their intellectual capacity to understand, but if they're calling me, if they're trying to identify me with people that have so much courage to be able to be out about who they are and the consequences that they suffer because of it, that's telling me that you're associating me with a brave and courageous person. Yeah, I take that as a compliment. Okay, so that is the end of part 2, paragraph 3, and we'll be beginning part 3 in a little bit. Thank you. See you soon, I hope.